Hi everyone, this is Meenakshi Ramesh from tapyowaytohealing.com. Welcome to my channel to this interview with a good friend. His name is Kevin Stratmann. He's a coach and a mentor. We recently met him at a friend's place, and it's been a we've had a very interesting conversation during the time, and obviously I learned that he has a lot to share, lot to offer to all of us and to the world. So here we are having a conversation. Before we focus on today's topic, I talk a little bit about it. I want to read Kevin's bio. All right. Kevin is the creative heart of the inner magnet process. He's an expert in the field of executive and corporate coaching. The innovative inner magnet practices he has developed provide a key which unlocks and optimizes focus and energy for groups and individuals, which then opens imaginations to the unlimited why, what, and how of personal and collective expansion. In educating facilitators with the inner magnet methodology, Kevin has transformed the lives of countless individuals and groups seeking expanded possibility. As a focused listener, authentic speaker, and keynote presenter with over 25 years of experience, he is adept at resolving conflict, strategic planning, and business management. Particular skill sets Kevin brings to his training include lessons learned, SWAT, ADKAR, resource allocation, and crisis containment. Thank you, Kevin, for joining us today. Welcome to my channel. And thank you so much for setting aside the time and willing to share your knowledge and your inner wisdom and your expertise on the topic of practicing presence. So before I give it over to Kevin, I let Kevin take over. The reason I came up with this topic for our audience is because of again the conversation that we recently had with Kevin when this topic of practicing presence came about, and he had so many tips to share. I asked him, could he share some tips about how to practice presence, because we are living in a very fast paced world where people are always in the doing mode, in the go 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 mode. And I personally, for myself, I'm always looking for tools and tips to ground myself, to come back to this moment and practice presence moment by moment by moment, because I feel that is very important. It helps me and it helps me help my family and my clients and the greater world in general. So having said that, I want Kevin to take over and share his valuable tips on practicing presence.
That's a very general question, and I don't know where to start. But first off, you had thrown the word out there earlier with me of crisis. What do you do when you see a crisis? And I think that the issue with crisis is when you go through a crisis, or you're going through a difficulty, or you're going through what's happening, and you have a bunch of meaning around it. Ultimately, you're not in presence. And the meaning kind of puts you in a trap, because you continue to take the meaning and feed it back into what happened, and the meaning and feeding it back into what happened, and you don't really have a space around it or a presence around it to create anything new, and you're kind of just in prison. The thoughts, you're just enslaved to your thoughts rather than having your thoughts serve you. So the first thing, though, I think that is important to recognize is if you don't start to develop an awareness of being with your thoughts rather than being your thoughts, this whole conversation becomes very difficult, because even this conversation that we're having right now, what's happening is we're bringing it into our brain, and our intellect is trying to see if it makes sense or not. And it's still kind of like the same conundrum that we're in, which is our thoughts are enslaving us rather than serving us. So the first thing that we have to do before we can ever really do anything with those crises and kind of transcend them, if you will, and create some new possibilities is to really get in the habit of being with our thoughts, just really being with our thoughts. And it's a completely different hardwire. It's not feeding to your brain. If you look at so many different motivational speakers out there right now, most of the time they take you back into your head and they have you process in your head through an intellectual understanding. So the first simple practice is to just develop means or ways to be able to just see yourself having thoughts. Like if I ask you right now, Radha, what's your next thought going to be? What would you say?
I
You don't
don't
know.
know.
You don't know. You don't know. And that moment I asked you, what's your next thought going to be? You became an awareness to seeing yourself thinking. Just for that one moment, what's your next thought going to be? I don't know. Right. So all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I'm having thoughts. You actually separated yourself from being your thoughts and actually seeing yourself having thoughts. If I say, this is as good as it gets, this is as good as it gets, for just a moment, you might even feel that energy. But then what happens is if you just stay there for a moment, you'll see the thoughts starting to tell you why it's not as good as it gets. So as you start to practice, this being an awareness of your thoughts, that's the first tool that becomes so important, is really to make it like the back of your hand. And even right now, talking about it, I know you've been doing presence work for a long time, and I know you bring people into presence through your work. So I think that this isn't a complicated conversation for you. But for the average Joe, I would say that the idea of seeing yourself thinking, it becomes conceptual, and it's kind of, you want to try to get it in your head, but that's not where you're going to get it. It's really just seeing your thoughts. You can start by just logging them down. Take 5 or 10 minutes, write down some thoughts that come up, or stories that come up, or emotions that you're seeing, and just write them down. I'm having sadness. Okay, great. That's a thought. I am sad. Okay, that's a thought. Why is the sky blue? Okay, that's a thought. You just really notice that as you're having thoughts, that they're thoughts. They're not the essential energy of who you are. They're just the things that are coming through you, and the decisions and agreements and beliefs that you've learned from the past. And even the way you see things are programmed in those thoughts that are coming up. So this is really the first practice, is to just really, before we can even say what to do in a crisis, is to just separate yourself from the thoughts. Pretend you're watching a movie and you're not the major drama character in the movie. You're just watching the movie. You're not attached to the meaning, but you're just watching it as it is happening. Now, there's a lot of places to get the presence that helps to facilitate this ability to be aware of your thoughts. Breathing is a great one. Breathing. I think that you were talking to me about tapping, and that this is just amazing how when they do this process that I don't know the process so well. I've never experienced it, but I've heard about it, that you can actually kind of keep the person in the present moment by distracting them or something. And so you actually keep them in the present moment as you're doing the process. Is that correct?
It brings them to the body, actually. It brings them in the here and now. It brings them to the here and now. Yeah. Basically helps them to ground and
Right.
really focus on their thoughts. Like, not focus, I shouldn't use the word focus. To connect with their thoughts, to connect with their emotions,
Yeah.
which is like, not to kind of push it away, is to be with them, but then you're in the safe, using the safe tool called tapping.
Yeah, that's the magic right there. See, that's the magic that we're striving, and there's different modalities to get it, right? So when you can get a person to just be with their thoughts in awareness. This is the space that you have to disappear it and create something new, which is going to what we're going to talk about after this, and the other question you discussed with me earlier. So once you start to get this ability to really, really get present in the present moment, then you can clearly see your thoughts as they're happening. Now they're serving you, and you can put them into the quanta without putting extra meaning into them. Okay, is that serving me? Do I need to know that? And you can start to manage them through this presence. Now, I mentioned to you a second ago about the presence. So the presence in doing this process, there's different ways. There's different strokes for different folks. There's all kinds of different ways of doing it. I mentioned breathing is a real good one. A body scan, just to see yourself rather than, like as you're breathing, visualize yourself watching yourself in that breath. Or looking at a candle and just getting really, really present with the flicker on the candle, or walking as slow as you can for lunch, taking a walk and just slowing yourself down. So you're just literally putting yourself in that very moment from each step in each step that you're taking. So as you start to do these different practices, and as the thoughts start to come in, you start to become stronger and stronger, and more inept, not inept, more and more capable of being able to really see, oh, that's a thought. Somebody cuts you off on the freeway, and you're like, before you might have wanted to call them some name or something, but you'll be able to see the thought as it comes up. Oh, I want to call them a name. And sometimes something will happen in the middle of the day that just kind of really shocks you or something. And instead of being triggered by it, you can see the thought that comes in so that you're not triggered by it. Now, once you start to get real good at this, as I mentioned earlier, you can start to put it somewhere else rather than your brain, rather than in your cognitive understanding. You could just do, like, something comes up and, I'm feeling that this isn't fair and I'm not being loved. Instead of sitting there and saying, well, why is it that I don't feel like I'm loved? And did this person mean to do something to me to show that I'm not loved? Instead of going there, your brain or your separation, your fragmentation will throw you off every time. It will always tell you what's missing, and you're not going to get anywhere with it. But if you see the thought that's like, I'm not loved, or I don't have time to do what I want to do, or, I am sad. If you start to see those thoughts as they come up, and you're now so familiar with them because you've been practicing this for a while. And I would interject right here that, you don't need to start with your most difficult triggers.
Right.
You can start with that guy
You
on
can
the
start off with
airplane.
something simple.
Yeah, you can start with that guy on the
Something
airplane
simple.
that's taking part of your armrest. Right? I'm not telling you to
That's a
start with
good
your.
one.
I'm not telling you to start with your husband or your
Right,
or your
right,
children. Start with easy things. It's okay. Start to
right,
get that
right,
hardwire with easy things. So, okay, well, you
right.
feel like, okay, I am sad, or and as these things start to come up, just take those thoughts and look at them, and just ask your 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 true self, like ask your present self, just say, is this serving me? You see, the subconscious is so huge. The subconscious is so much bigger than our cognitive understanding. Our cognitive understanding, one guy said, Emerson, I think is his name, he says, like, we get like 40 bits of information in any given second. That's only like 2 or 3 conversations. When we have like tens of thousands of bits of information that are coming at us in any given second, we're just getting this little tiny little piece of it. So when you go to your subconscious and you say to your subconscious, okay, I am sad, and you ask your subconscious, is that serving me? And don't come up with an answer, make it an inquiry. Just leave it in the ethos, in the ethers.
Right.
Just leave it right there. Is that thought serving me? Or I wonder why that person didn't call me. Do I need to know that? Just get real familiar with just putting it in your subconscious. And then what happens is you're now starting to operate in an energy field. There's actually an energy, E equals MC squared. We're people of energy. And so as you start to step into that energy of, okay, is that serving me? You'll find most of the time, almost immediately, in the energy that comes inside of you, it will give you that answer, but not here, but more in an understanding, more in a natural knowing, more in, okay, I can see this doesn't feel right. This isn't making me feel comfortable. And just by doing that process, you start to clear up some of these thoughts and some of these stories and some of these emotions. And it's just phenomenal, Radha. It's just phenomenal. I've had people, their lives have become completely transformed just with a few sessions because they're able to clear up these stories sometimes that they've been creating since they were 3 or 4 years old.
Right.
So
Right. And from what you're saying, on your website, I was seeing like, a quote from Carl Jung, how, there's something about bringing the unconscious to the conscious. From what you're saying, the more we practice presence, we begin to quiet quiet our minds, and then that kind of opens us up to this, probably bringing the unconscious to the conscious, so
That's
that,
right.
we are able to make
Yeah,
those connections and get the big picture. I don't know if I'm articulating it in the right
exactly.
way. Just
William James, what we tend to is our reality, right? Something like that. Maybe I didn't say it exact, or Carl Jung, until you bring consciousness to your unconsciousness, it will control you, and you'll call it fate. Everything is pointing to this thinking that we're having, and we don't even know that we're creating our own crisis, that we're creating our own suffering through the thinking that we have around it. And so once we start to get really, really present, and we can start to see the thinking that we're having around things, we can then now disappear that. And now we have a space to create something new. So, I mean, if we're going to, if I give you some examples, one person said, I can't get rid of my financial anxiety. And I said, okay, if you say so, if you did, you would give up who you consider yourself to be by thinking that you are your financial anxiety. So that's a difficult thing to say, because you're going to continue to create financial anxiety by saying, I can't get rid of it, or I don't have enough time to do what I want to do. Just by saying that, you're creating it by saying that. You're creating that energy. And you've made it into what you believe is true, or to what you've agreed is true. So if you were to not have that thought, it would be like taking away a piece of yourself. And then who would you be? And that's a vulnerable place to be if you weren't these things that you've agreed to. I'll give you an example. Like I like sports, and I knew my team, my football team, and I don't want to trigger anybody, so I won't tell you who my football team is. But the thing is, every time my team was losing, it would feel like I was being, punched in the stomach or something. And I realized the reason why was because it was my team. It was a part of who I considered myself to be through my thinking. And when I was able to see that, thought, oh, look, I'm having that feeling because I'm actually thinking this is a part of who I am, this team, because I've made that up. So once I was able to see that, I could actually enjoy watching my team even when they were losing. because I didn't have the buy-in. So then I was able to create something new, which is enjoying watching my football team play without having to feel the pain when they're losing. So I think that will be our next subject, right? Which the next thing that we'll talk about is how do we create greater health or abundance or peace of
great
mind,
relationships,
or better
yeah,
relationships. And I think that's right where we're at right now, is once we really get good once we really get good at really familiarizing ourselves with our thoughts, watching the movie rather than being the drama character, being with our thoughts rather than being our thoughts. Once we really practice that, then we can have a conversation of creating something new. And I'll throw myself out on under the bus right now. Is the thing that I have the tendency to do is to want to go straight into the creating, which is the part that we're in right now, because it's where we're at right now in the conversation, because it's so fun. But the thing is, if we start to create and we haven't cleared up and seen that we have all these beliefs and identities and agreements that are keeping us in a very small space, unless we're able to really open that up so that we can be in the present moment, we can be more vulnerable, we can take more risk. You can't create anything new. You can't create anything new. If you do, some people say they're trying to, or I was talking to your husband, right? And we were talking about the corporate world. And the corporate world is very much stuck in paying its investors. And so the investors, they don't want you to take risk, right? As little risk as possible, but the more you're working to not take risk, the more that you're stuck in a confined place, because you can't create anything new. All you're doing is taking something from the past, like maybe you have a mud cake, right? Something from the past, and you're putting frosting on it, and you're saying, oh, look, I have a new cake, but it's not really new. So the way of creating something new is to really, really get familiar with your thoughts and see those decisions, see those beliefs, see those agreements. And then as you do that, you can also do this with others, because as you get real familiar, you can also see where people are stuck in their stories and their beliefs and their agreements. Now we can have the conversation. It's just imperative that we get this first part of practice of being present with your thoughts. If you don't have that, the creative process is not as effective. So in the creative process, this is the thing that I've been working to develop, Radha, is almost everything I see out there, and I don't want to pick on anybody, but like Joe Dispenza or Tony Robbins or Stephen Kotler. There's a lot of motivational speakers, and they just got so much good information, and it's just really powerful. And they've transformed so many people's lives, I'm sure. But the one thing that I see is they continue to take you back into your thinking about it. And they can immediately have another course after they finish a certain course by telling you what you didn't get yet. And that's the nature of the brain, which we talked about before. Our brain has only got such a capacity. It can't get everything. So the nature of it is fragmentation and bias in these things that we've learned. So what I'm striving to do in my work is to really take it into a non-cognitive place, Rod. I think I could compare it also with what you do, is to take it more into an energy. So when a person has a thought, and now they've gotten really good at seeing that they're having those thoughts, instead of analyzing those thoughts with them, just take them in that thought and ask them, what does it feel like? Is it expansive? How deep is it? Is it painful? And not the story of when will it go away, the meaning, and it's been happening so long, but just taking them in a complete awareness with them right there. Okay, what does that sadness feel like? I am a sad person. Are you a sad person, or are you having sadness? Take them out of the story of what they've created as to who they are, and take them into the present moment. Right. Take them into the present moment. And so once you do that, you can say, what does it feel like? They say, well, it feels painful, or it feels constrictive, or it feels very, very deep, or it feels very large, or it feels like a certain color. And then once they get what they're feeling in that experience, at that moment, you can take their presence practices, whatever they may be, because each person has different presence practices, and I don't want to tell them how to have certain present practices if they don't really work for them individually. But let's say a person is really good at breathing and doing body scans. Then I may say to the person, what is the energy of a very present breathing energy scan feel like? And they can say, well, it's very expansive, it's very warm, it's very connected, it's very whole. They'll say anything, right? And I'll say, great, now let's just take that energy. Let's just feel that energy, and let's put that energy right in that energy of that sadness. And you know what happens, Radha? I mean, it's just amazing. It just disappears. Now they can start to create. Now, this is not like an Om practice or a meditation or something like that or nothing. It's not a space of getting to nothing where there's no action. This practice that I'm teaching fully requires action. But now that you have the clearing of the canvas, right? And if you've cleared it with that space, you can imagine you're a painter and you've got hundreds of colors to choose from. And you can then say, well, what does it feel like in relationship? What does it feel like in abundance? And what happens though is people oftentimes will say, I want abundance, or I want this, or I want that. And I feel that they're kind of sabotaging themselves, because remember, everything is of energy, and anything that has been created in this energy. So the energy is all around us all the time. So once you say that you want it, it's almost like you're projecting the energy of you don't have it, right? You do have it. You just need to express it. So you just need to express what it is. If I go and I want to buy a, let's see, vegetarian dish at the Indian restaurant, and I say I want some vegetarian curry, or if you're a meat eater, I want a hamburger. You know, it's a little bit odd, because the person might ask you, well, you want a hamburger? Are you going to pay for it? You know, you usually know you're going to pay for it, and you say, hey, look, I'm going to have some vegetarian curry, or I'm going to have a hamburger, you know, and I'm going to pay for it. You're just creating, I'm having a hamburger. You don't say, I want a hamburger. So this is what's so great, is when you start to come in creation where you're not coming in a decision and a belief and an agreement, but you're coming from the possibility of what would it look like closing on my house and getting a house, a co-op, and moving in about 10 days before my lease expires, so that I don't have to renew my lease, and so that I can just go straight into the co-op. I wonder what that would look like. And then just by saying, what would it look like, and what actions can I take, and what actions can I say I don't need to know right now, but I'm in the energy of it happening. And I'm just absolutely amazed right now that 10 days before my lease ends, I am closing, actually 12 days before. So that it's just a seamless process that I can do absolutely everything. I don't have to be paying rent in two places. And it's something that the universe just did. And by it being extended just a little bit longer, my mortgage went down 1.6% in interest rate. So I'm saving $150 or more a month in my payments. So I just say, oh my gosh, we are so powerful. We can create anything. What does it look like having abundance? You know, what does it look like? And not 2 million or 3 million or 5 million, because that's an agreement again. It's a number, it's a fixed place. But how about if we just put it in, what does the energy of abundance feel like? And it feels like not worrying about finances. It feels like being able to go and see my son in Austria if I want to go see my son. And it feels like, and to just start to have that experience. And you can do this with anything, relationships as well. I had a niece, I have a niece, and about a year ago, I did this process with her, and she had several bad relationships, and she's like, I don't even know if I want to date. And I said, well, before you even think about whether you're going to date or whether you don't date, let's start to create what what kind of relationship you're going to be in when you get in a relationship. And what does it feel like? And what kind of energies does this person you're dating have? Are they loving? Are they trustable? Or, are they generous? Are they funny? Are they handsome? And let's just start to see what it feels like inside of you right now. Because everything is happening in the present moment. What does it feel like inside of you right now, like it's already happened? Let's start to be in that energy of what it feels like. And oh, great, that's great, that's great. And in that energy, you start to create it. 3 months later, she called me. I found the love of my life. I'm deeply in love. I can't believe it. It's everything that we talked about. And it sounds hokey, and it's and I don't even want to create that. I don't want to say it sounds hokey, but you know what? It's too good to be true to realize that, we're connected to such a great energy, and we don't need to want, we just need to focus our energy. But we haven't been able to focus our energy because we've been using all our energy in stories and beliefs and agreements and things that have continued to, it's like kind of taking our past and continue to create our future rather than coming in the present moment and creating from right there. I don't know if this is
Wow.
too complicated.
No, no, no. It is.
Talking too
It's
much.
not. It's not.
Yeah.
No, no, no. No. It's like, yeah. I want you to do. Like I said, I wanted you to do all the talking. Yeah, and this is it really ties well with all the work that I've been putting out in my channel, because as you said, everything is energy, and we all are beings of energy. So when we come from a place of certain energy, we can transmit that, radiate that to the people, to the field, to the people in our lives. And the tool, that the practicing presence really fits in perfect
Yeah,
with
yeah.
what we want to, with where we want to go, from where we are to where we want to go. Yeah.
And that's why I was so moved by when I found out what you do, because I mean, there's just this correlation that's just so super awesome, because it's now proven scientifically. The doctor, I forget his name, but he won the Nobel Prize on this, and how long-term memory comes out of our long-term memory. We remember it, we
Mhm.
visualize it, and then we put it back in our long-term memory. Now, if we don't put it back in our long-term memory, then it's not there anymore because we've taken it out. And so when you can do something like with somebody that has trauma, and you can take them into the present and really just being there, and you don't give them the space to put it back in their long-term memory, you've now created a transformation in people. And once you create that transformation, there's unlimited possibilities that open up, unlimited possibilities. And I mean, it's so simple, but our brain wants to make it look like it's so hard. My son's a musician. He's the second principal at the Vienna Phil in Vienna. He just was on the New Year's concert. 55 million people watch it, and he's sitting up front. It was pretty exciting watching my son.
Mm,
But the thing is, a couple of years ago or 3 years ago, when he first was just struggling, he says, "Dad, I've got everything, but I still have these bad days." And one of the things that he
mm,
was saying, like, was, for example, if he didn't play as well as he wanted to, he would come home and he
mm,
would, kind of internally think about why he didn't play as good as he wanted to. And one time he said to me, "Dad, I am a musician, and that I'm suffering." And I said, "Exactly, exactly. That's because you've made yourself a musician, and you made it into a
yeah,
decision. You've agreed to that
mm,
decision. And now we can do something with that instead of and he's just amazing at getting himself present. He's a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant guy. And now, instead of thinking that you are a musician, why don't you, and I just say that you're in the possibility of being a musician. So if you have a bad day, it's just a bump in the road. It's just something that's happening in that moment, but it's not who you are, and you're not giving your energy away. It's just a bad day. It's just a bad moment.
mm,
And you're still
mm,
creating without
mm,
living in that past decision. You're creating the possibility every moment, now and now
mm,
and now and now, of being a great musician. And he's like, he calls me up now. Now that was 2 or 3 years ago that we had that conversation, and it's like almost every time he calls me now, it's just great. It's just great. It's just
Mm.
great. Even if he had a day that wasn't perfect to him, it's just a bump in the road.
Right, right. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's not personal.
And life, yeah, and it's the bump in the road is a great analogy for all of us too. It's a
Yeah,
great analogy and a great takeaway message, because that's what life is all about. We do go face bumps, and it's very important to be able to separate our emotions and our energy
yeah,
from, discerning that, this is just a bump,
yeah,
this is just a hump, and
yeah,
we will get over this. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, don't put the meaning
yeah,
into it, and it's just happening.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
just, I'm experiencing sadness, or I am sad. Completely different energy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right, right, right.
Yeah. One is in
And
presence, and one is in presence, and one is in some decision that becomes a line in the sand.
right, right. And I can feel it myself that, with all these practices, any tools, breathing or body scan, like as you were saying, practicing mindfulness and practicing presence. um, as years go by, the more and more I notice that even if we are in the toughest moment, like if we feel that we are facing a challenge, I feel that things are moving, shifting all the time at a subtle level. Like when you ask me what is my next thought, now that I think about it, that moment has passed. It just moves. It's constantly shifting, and that is very liberating for me. Like, that moment it's gone. It's now in this moment, in this moment, in this moment.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
yeah,
It's just too good to be. And what's so great
yeah,
is to know that the subconscious, or this E equals MC squared, in quantum physics, if you take a photon in a chamber and you try to see it, and observe it, it appears where you think it's going to show up in probability. It pretty much appears there. But when you don't say where it's supposed to show up, and you're sitting in I don't know, and you're in discovery, and you're just taking your brush and painting the canvas with just one stroke, when you're in that moment, you're open to create new possibilities.
mm,
So
yeah,
this is the thing that's so beautiful about it. It's so beautiful is that we don't have to decide. And then when we do that, what happens is you can't even put it into words, because then it would be another definition, but a natural knowing comes through. You just feel it. You
mm,
just have a natural knowing, and it just doesn't feel right, or it does feel right.
mm,
And you're much more productive than in using all your energy of what could be or what should be, or using your energy from that past moment in time.
right. Awesome, awesome, Kevin. Beautifully
Yeah.
said. So, any final thoughts, or something that you want to share with our audience
Well,
about practicing presence?
I just would say that, in create, make it as big as you possibly can. Don't confine it to yourself, because
Mm,
our meeting and Thanksgiving dinner and immediately striking up such a nice friendship, um,
mm,
wasn't just a coincidence. There was an energy that I'm sure brought us together in that lovely
right,
environment to be able
right,
to
right.
spend time with each other, and and so I would just say it's the same thing, with you and me. We're in the possibility of more presence, and as we get more presence, that possibility is affecting other places, just like that butterfly flapping its wings in South America that is making a difference in North America. So as to what, one scientist said, by us standing in, okay, I'm in abundance, it doesn't have to be just your own abundance, but be in the energy of other people having abundance as well. Make it into
Right.
a creation that isn't defined by it having to be limited just to yourself. Make it into something really, really big. And I find when you stand in that bigness that goes beyond just yourself, like being connected with you in this nice
Mhm.
conversation right now, that the creation is faster and more powerful.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you
Yeah,
for joining me and sharing
yeah.
your insights with our audience. Thank you so
Thank you so
much.
much. Thank you.
Yeah. Let me stop recording.